Okay, well, welcome to this Azul webinar, Tools and Techniques for a Faster Migration. My name is Simon Ritter. I'm the Deputy CTO at Azul, and I'm joined today by Joao Gonzalez, who's in charge of our migration process. Joao, would you like to say hello?
Hi, everyone. I work at Azul, as Simon was saying. So basically what we did was we developed a very nice process, and we're going to try to guide you guys through the ideas that we have and some techniques and some clever ways to quickly swap to OpenJDK.
Great. As a bit of background, one of the reasons we're doing this webinar is that we have just recently published the book OpenJDK Migration for Dummies. This was a book that I wrote in conjunction with Elise Cox at Azul, and the idea was to help people understand, as the title would sort of make clear, how to migrate to different builds of OpenJDK. And it really is a straightforward process. But what we've tried to do is to kind of condense down all the knowledge that we've found about that and some of the sort of edge cases and things. And that's why I thought it'd be a really good idea to have a webinar about this and talk to Joao, because Joao actually produced a lot of the information from the experience that he's had with working with different customers and understanding the issues that they faced in certain aspects. So we'll kind of talk through that. So the first thing is that what we've kind of come up with is this idea of a three-phased approach to the whole idea of migration. So Joao, do you want to kind of talk us through what those three phases are and how they work and so on?
Yeah, sure. So basically what we have is a new process, and we wanted to simplify things, right? So as you know, we have a lot of cases with big customers, big accounts, and they all suffer from the same pain, right? So they have similar things that we can observe, from different situations that happen over time during the migration, right? So the idea was to simplify the process using, as I said in the beginning, right, clever ways, and we came across this three-phase idea, which is basically a discovery phase, an agile process for the discovery phase, execution, and validation, which means testing, right? And this is an iterative model. So it means that you don't have to actually have everything just like in a cascade process. You can actually go through and evolve as the product goes. And this is quite nice because when you have, big states like our cases, right? So we just came from a meeting yesterday, and the customer has 80K, right? So it's a big state that is migrating, right? So it's probably not going to be mapping everything in a single shot, right? This is going to be very hard. But the main idea is to do this. And another thing to that is to not only have the process, but also consolidate the process with the tools, right? Because when we have a Java state on that size, you don't want to do it a machine by machine, right? As we see in some of the cases in the past, but because that's just going to take forever, and that's not acceptable, right? So the idea is to use the tools and the knowledge base that we have to just drive and just make everything faster for a quick swap.
Right. And in terms of those three phases, what are the individual phases that we use?
Yeah, we go all the way. So we help them. We have this new concept of migration advisory, and basically we guide them all the way again, right? So we're not a services company, as you know, but we do a lot of work on the side with them. So they are actually piloting the project, but we are doing everything else, right? So we are helping them classify their data, finding the properties that are necessary, creating the pipelines and the playbooks and so on. And of course, right, we provide the tools as is, so they can actually use as is, or they can actually derive the tools and make implementations of their own or use theirs. So we work with whatever data they provide.
Right. And I mean, certainly what I've documented in the book, based on what we've kind of discussed in the past, is this idea that we start off with the first bit, which is where you have to identify all of the machines that you have running Java, and then obviously you need to make an inventory. So I mean, that's obviously often the part that takes longest to do, isn't it? Because Java's been around for so long that many people have lots of machines, as you said, 80,000 machines. And we find a lot of people have got machines that have been installed maybe 10, even 15 years ago, and they're still running Java quite happily with their applications. So that sort of discovery phase is definitely one that people spend a lot of time on. And we have some tools that we can provide in terms of help for that, don't we?
Yeah, we do. For discovery phase, we have several tools. The biggest thing is not only that, the size of the state, which in itself is already a challenge, right? But there's situations not only related, but there's other type of situations, like for instance, segregated environments, networks of nets that really don't have reachability to those automation tools, and several tools that need to be distributed. So there's a lot of challenges around this, right? So the tools, they were developed basically in shell script, right? I just love shell script because I was a sysadmin, in my past life. So I just love it, right? So, but it's not the main reason, of course, right? So shell scripts are the main idea because, first of all, they can actually make the changes. So we're talking about IT admins most of the time because so we're going to talk about, we're going to run a batch of 10,000 plus machines, right? We're not really talking about, with only application developers, but we're really talking about the IT admins most of the time because they are the ones that are going to push this. So they need to understand what is there, right? So that's one of the main reasons is that those tools are written in shell script to help them to facilitate that process. And then there is the other aspect to this, which is InfoSec, right? Because InfoSec sometimes, they really have to evaluate, they have to put it in a QA, in a sandbox environment and test it and see if everything goes well. And it facilitates for them to actually see the code there, other than having, this written in Java. So actually, this is one of the questions that I had that someone asked me, one customer asked me, I think 2 or 3 days ago, right? So why not have you guys have a Java company, right? So you develop the JVM. So why you guys don't develop this in Java, right? And the main reason is that, right? Because, it's easier for them to use shell script, right, than to actually have to analyze. And IT admins, they don't understand Java at all, right? So that's the main thing. And not even Go or any other of those tools, most of the times anyways, right?
Yeah, it's kind of chicken and egg thing, isn't it? So if you're going to use a
Yes.
Java tool to scan systems to see if they have Java installed, it's like you'd need to know that they had Java installed first to be able to run that Java. So it's sort of like, okay, defeats the object of the exercise. So yes, I absolutely see what you're saying in terms of using shell script, because you can predict that any Linux machine will run a script, any Windows machine will have the ability to run scripting and so on. So that makes a lot of sense. And I think from that, what we kind of get is that the people who are doing the migration, they need to have a very clear picture of which machines have Java not just installed but actually in use, and that can be the sort of tricky thing, because a lot of customers I've seen have sort of standard builds that they deploy to desktops, and that standard build may include a Java runtime, even though that particular user might not require it because they don't run any Java applications. So that's again something that they need to sort of filter out. If they've got machines that don't necessarily need Java installed, well, is it really required to go through that process? But I think the important thing to get from that is that in the discovery phase, you want to build up a very precise picture of which Java is installed, and down to the version level in each machine, so that you know exactly what you're doing in terms of migration. And then obviously the second phase is to move to actually doing the installation. And then the third phase is to do the testing to verify that what you've installed runs in exactly the same way that you would expect it to.
And just one thing. Sorry, I didn't
yeah, please. Yeah.
Just one thing. We do things kind of in a different way. So execution is divided actually in 2 phases, right? So we do a quick swap. We call it a quick swap, right? And a quick swap is basically you don't have to install Zulu for doing sanity tests and so on, which they probably would do it, right? They do it with every product, with any software installation. You have to go and run sanity tests, right? So you can actually do a quick swap, and a quick swap doesn't install anything, doesn't change the environment, just quickly verify as needed, and then you just have to commit the change afterwards. So that's this is just an idea in terms of how how powerful those simple but clever ways can help you quickly, move from Oracle to us, to OpenJDK.
Yeah, I mean, again, with that sort of deployment phase, one of the things that obviously we can do is we can provide, different installation media. So if you want to use the automated installation for Windows, you've got MSI files, you've got the RPM and deb files for Linux, you've got the DMG files for Mac. Or if you want to do an install in a particular directory, then you can use zip files or compressed tar files. And obviously the automated installs are easier because that sets the sort of global link for the Java runtime so that applications will pick that up by default. But if you're installing in a particular directory, then you have to maybe make changes to either the path environment or the Java home environment variable. I think, again, sort of coming back to that sort of drop-in replacement idea that you're just installing the same Java at the same level, same version, and so on. It's important to kind of get across that the reason we can do that is because we're building from OpenJDK, and OpenJDK is the open source. And once we've created a binary distribution of that, we then use the TCK tests. It's like 100,000 plus tests, which is used to verify that what we've created actually matches the Java SE standard. And that's a great way of customers being able to sort of understand that they actually have something that is a drop-in replacement. So let's kind of move to the idea of like when you do that installation and you get your applications running, there are some places where people do need to think a little bit more carefully about things that might change in terms of how they actually configure things. I mean, on the server side, we know that it is very simple because you've got the JDK, because it's TCK tested. Functionally, an OpenJDK build is identical to any other OpenJDK build that's passed the TCK. Where we see some issues is obviously the desktop. And the reason for that is because some of the features that have been used on desktop Java in the past haven't been made part of OpenJDK, specifically around applets and Java Web Start. So I know you've got a lot of experience with Java Web Start. So can you kind of talk us through some of the things you found in terms of that you need to be aware of and maybe think about when you're migrating from sort of Oracle JDK maybe to Azul?
Yeah, so that's precisely the point, right? So that's exactly. So most of the times when you have finds, especially when you see in the inventory a version JDK 6 32 bits in a desktop, you know that you have applets running there for sure, right? So that situation is pretty awesome. So most of the times, just a quick swap and replacement, and it's just seamless. You just place, version 6 and version 7 and version 8, and it simply works. But sometimes, especially when there is, specific configuration, when you're doing, deployment rule sets for deploying a new applets, new desktop, this can be complicated because of the signing off, especially related to the signing of the jar files. But honestly, most of the cases, like 99% of the cases that we handle with this, we solve it in just in a quick manner, right? Just probably 1 or 2 days. There's not a lot to say about that there. One thing related to WebStart, though, is that, as you know, right, so we have to install ICWeb. There's other options as well in the market, but ICWeb is the one that we support, right? And I think is the only one that is actually being supported anymore. In the past, there was this new open WebStart, which supports new versions of the OpenJDK, but again, it's not being supported as ICWeb because we are actually supporting it as well, right? But the changes in the GNLP files are pretty simple, right? And most of the times you just have to change the ITW settings file, and just by changing the ITW setting files is enough. And one thing that we see, actually, this is what I recommend, that I did work with one of our customers to actually automate the changes, right? So it's just a comparison because we are talking about XML files. So it's very simple to analyze the contents of the XML files and make a quick, just because the ITW settings is different from the configuration you have in WebStart, right? So you have to do from WebStart to ITW, it's just a comparison and make the changes as required, right? But other than this is going to be mostly is going to be enough to make and handle those problems.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's interesting with the whole sort of web start thing because, as I said, it wasn't actually included in OpenJDK as open source. And I mean, I used to work for Sun back in the day, and I remember that in the very early days of Java, there was some effort made to sort of standardize the way that Java Web Start works, so that there is actually a JSR around the Java Network Launch Protocol, so the JNLP files that are used there. So there actually is a standard, but funnily enough, the one that was used in the original JDK didn't actually interpret the JNLP files precisely according to that standard. So when people write the, sometimes they use JNLP files which are slightly, different, but they're bug compatible with the builds of JDK from the past. And when you move to ICT Web, sometimes you find that because ICT Web is enforcing the standard more definitively, then you can run into problems. So it's not that you've written a bad JNLP file, you've got a bad JNLP file for your application. It's just the ICT Web is interpreting it in a slightly more formal way. Yeah. But the good thing about this is that obviously we've had a lot of experience. We've helped a lot of customers in terms of making that switch from using the old style JDK, JNLP, and Java Web Start, and moving them to ICT Web so that they can continue to run their applications. I don't think we've had a situation where we haven't been able to resolve that either through.
No, not this case. Well, what happens sometimes, most of the times, is not a technical problem, as you know, right? We solve it basically, right? This is a political one. Some situations is not that we cannot make it work, but sometimes, the vendor it's a little stubborn. It doesn't want to support even if we say to them, listen, it's the same thing, right? So Oracle, OpenJDK, actually OpenJDK is a trademark from Oracle, right? So it's the same thing. We have maybe not the same bits, especially in the old ones, but for now, if you take a latest version, it's going to be pretty much the same, right?
Yes,
compiled from the same source.
Yeah, certainly from JDK 11 onwards, because that's when Oracle dropped all of the features that they had, which are outside of OpenJDK. So their builds now are just OpenJDK features. So that's good. Everybody knows that from JDK 11 onwards, it's easy. But of course, lots of people are still using JDK 8. Lots of people are still using JDK 7 and JDK 6 even. The good thing is that we can continue to support people with the security patches and the bug fixes for those older versions. I do come across some customers who are using even older versions. I think I saw one customer using JDK 1.3 recently, but that's probably not a great thing to do. But even with JDK 6, you can still run JDK 5 applications, and they will work without any problem.
I see another one. I saw a customer running a 32-bit Linux machine with version 1.2.
Stop it! Don't do it anymore.
I'm not kidding. I'm not kidding. It's true.
Yeah, but it does show that Java has that longevity. I mean, the fact that people have been using those applications all this time and they continue to work. The only thing that I think that those people really do need to consider is how safe are those applications from a security point of view, because there have been a fair few CVEs that have been addressed since JDK 1.2. Okay, so again, one of the things that often comes up in discussions with customers when they're thinking about doing a migration is how long is it going to take? And I think one of the things that we really kind of need to get across to people is that the process itself is simple and straightforward. And we've got the book and we've got the advice and all the information that you've provided and the experience that you have, which means that when you approach the whole idea and the process, it is straightforward and it's simple. But if you've got 80,000 machines, it isn't going to be quick, is it?
Yeah, it's not. But anyways, I think one of the biggest things, there's a lot of discussions related to this, but one of the biggest things that happen is that they don't really understand. So they use Ascend to retrieve the reports, and it's okay, right? You should use it. But what you need to understand, right? This is mainly what I'm saying to all the customers, right? That you may have some false positives as well, right? Because the SAN is giving you, the entire T state. When you focus on one particular tool, it's not really specialized on that tool, right? So it's not going to give you information of the certificates that are in the CA certs file, right? Because this is not something that a SAN tool does, right? And it's not going to give you information very specific to the JDK runtime, because the CA is going to give you the sizing, right? And it's going to do a good job giving the sizings, where it's installed, and all the evidence for the Java state. But it's not going to give you details that are important, like internal configurations, like policy changes. This is not really something that is going to be there, right? And we know, right, for most of the times, probably 95% of the cases, it's just a seamless change. So just have to swap. And as you said, right, so you have those three famous, environment variables you have to set. Java home, class path. There's it, right? For most of the time, just by making those changes, and you can actually make those changes in the by just simply pushing the MSI, our MSI, which is pretty reasonable, right? But for some situations, you have to do additional trickery, you have to do additional configuration. And for those cases, right, where additional environment variables, additional changes in the JVM itself, in the JDK, OpenJDK itself are necessary, this is not going to be in the SAN. And it's not going to help. So if you try to do a migration like this, and we have a big banking, a big financial organization that tried to do that, and they failed tremendously, right? Because one of their critical application was actually required to do some additional configuration, right? And I'm not going to tell here because probably there's some, security reasons, but they didn't know that, and then they got that particular application was offline for an entire day, right? And they have to roll back. It generated all those stress, as you know, right? Because precisely because of that. So it's not only doing the inventory. Inventory, as you said in the beginning, right, is the very first thing you have to do. But after that, you have to also define what are the properties that are related to those installations. And this is what people don't really understand, because if you think in terms of number, right, 80K is a big number, but 80K is not related to the number of applications that are running there, right? Because that's the real number, because you may have 80K environments distributed across 5,000 applications. So it's much simpler, right? Because 5,000 applications it is exactly what you should be looking for, right? Because this is what exactly you are migrating. After this is just in terms of what environment you are migrating this to, right? Because as you know, Java is self-contained, right? So it doesn't really matter, what is the update you have, a specific update you have in the operational system, right? Or what operational system you're running, right? Doesn't make any sense if you start thinking about that, right? I remember, the first time I heard about Java, this was in the 90s, right? 25 years ago plus, write once, run anywhere, right? So this was the slogan. And that's precisely how it goes. So that's what you should see. In terms of sizing, it's scarce. Just to create a context, in terms of customers, what they see mainly was something like this happen. They do the inventory, they see 80K, and they think, all right, so this is going to take forever. But that's not exactly how you should look at this, right? You should look in terms of how many applications you have using the JVM, right? Because this is your real sizing. Because execution is very fast. Execution can be done. I'm not going to say the customer, but we have a case. This was, it was a 15K case, right? So you talk about a mid-size, not compared to banking, big companies and so on, but it was a reasonable size, right? So it's a 15K size state, and they migrated. The execution phase took about 3 weeks. So they have 3 change requests, one every weekend, and they did it in 3 weeks. So it's very fast because you already have everything mapped. So if you have everything mapped, so you know what are the applications, what properties are associated with additional properties, or as we call in the process, the compensation actions that need to be taking place for those applications specifically, then it's just have the right playbook configured in automation fashion and just put it to run.
Good. Yeah. So I think that's a really good kind of benchmark there. So 15,000 machines migrated over a period of 3 weeks. But I think the thing that I try to get across to people is that the bat phase can be very quick. So you can have 15,000 machines in 3 weeks, but it's the planning before that, which is going to take longer. So even though you're not actually doing anything in terms of changes, you need to do all the planning before that. So my advice is, if you're thinking about switching your JDK and maybe you've got a contract that's expiring at some point in terms of support, you need to be thinking about it early rather than thinking, well, I'll do it in 3 weeks or 4 weeks before the contract expires. So
you're not going to do it from start to finish in 3 weeks for sure.
No. So that's the important thing to get across there. Okay, so I think the last thing we'll just cover is that obviously we've written this book, we've published this book, and you can download it from free from our website. We'll put the link up for that so that people can access that if they want to. What other things can we provide in terms of help for people who want to make a migration to Azul's Zulu and Platform Core?
Yeah, so we have something that is called a migration workshop, and this is mainly for customers, or if you want to see everything that we talk about, not only in the book but also in the methodology in practice, right? The customers can actually come to us and create an agenda for a migration workshop, which is a two-part workshop where we go through the details about the process, those three-phase process, right? Of course, there's a lot more details about than just three phases. And then we go through the kind of a lecture way, educational way, describing what we have in the process, which is a fully reusable process. You can use it as a template and adapt to your own needs, or you can just go ahead and pilot it, right? And then we have the second part, which we actually go through the data, right, and do the analysis for the customer, right? So we actually do a quick preview, right, on that separated data that they have in their environment and give to them as an example, right? So by using our tools and our method.
Great. So it sounds like we've got all of this covered, I think. Right. So I think that's probably where we're going to kind of wrap up this webinar. What I will do is I'll just share my screen again. Just do that because we have another webinar that we're going to be running on September the 27th. Again, we're sort of with the theme of what we're doing here. We're going to be talking about some actual sort of migrations that we've been through, migration stories that people have. So if you're interested in learning more about that, then you can see there's a QR code there, and there's also a link there that people can use. And as I said, you can download the OpenJDK Migration for Dummies book from our website. So Joao, thank you very much for your insights on this. I hope this has been useful for the audience, and we will end the webinar there.